What is going on today, YouTube? Locust Motorworks back here. Today we're working on the John Deere 60. Now we're going to try putting this thing back together. Pulled the exhaust manifold on it. Hasn't ran in about 3 years or so, so we're going to put the exhaust manifold on her and get her running. So here's our old exhaust manifold. You can see she busted off. Doesn't look too pretty at all. The bolts are worn through there. It was leaking half to death. So we're going to go ahead, replace this. I got a new one over here. Here's the new gaskets I got for her. There's Dan cleaning up the new one. So some of you guys know when we pulled this exhaust manifold off, we had a couple of the bolts twist off down inside of there. So I decided to run a tap down in there just to make the threads look a little better. You can see this one looks good. And a couple of other ones turned out pretty nice, but there was one that looked like someone had cross-threaded in the past, that front one there, but I think we can make her work. So here's our new exhaust manifold. We're gonna end up putting this intake manifold on it before we slide it on the tractor. So we got our new gaskets down in there. Alright guys, so what the theory is here on this manifold, as you can see, you loosen this nut back here, turn that, and it's actually a valve inside of there, which controls exhaust flow, and that comes around and allows you to heat up that intake manifold for warming it up on cold days. You can switch it between cold and hot. We got this one right now in the off position because there's really just no need to warm that up. But yeah, you can also see this manifold was cracked in the past. Someone had welded it, so I guess we're gonna run with that. But yeah, just like that old one, she decided to crack. Alright, and what I'm doing here was just double checking that to make sure that was flat. And I did plane these, but I just wanted to double check and kind of scuff off a little bit of the rust that accumulated on it since I planed it last. Here we are setting her down on there. It seemed to actually go on pretty good. It was a little tricky lining up the gaskets though for the intake manifold to get the bolts to start. Now this is our intake gasket, and I've never used one that's like this exhaust style. I've always used just the normal paper gaskets for the intake one. So we're going to see how this one works. This is a DK gasket, so it should be a fairly decent gasket. Now it's time to go on with the old carburetor. Luckily these push right in. The only one bad thing on the other side, about you can only get a wrench on a couple of the bolts to tighten them up. Decided to pop the old settling bowl off. It's filled with a lot of that varnish smelling nasty old gas. Good thing though, we did drain out most of the gas before we parked this thing. Then it was time for a brand new battery. Now when I bought this tractor it came with two 6 volts, but I decided just to go with one and put the old 12 volt in her. So one thing on this 60 is it's got 2 oil lines running back to the oil gauge. And now those oil gauge come down here to the settling bowl and allow fuel to come in here. It's kind of their design of a shutoff for if you ran this thing out of oil. So there's a little top thing here you can push down and fill the bowl up. So on pretty much all 2 cylinders, this is how you're going to be able to check the oil on them. There's this little plug here you got to loosen up, and if the oil runs out, you're good to go. I was just happy there was no water or fuel running out of here, because sometimes it has a tendency if the head gasket leaks for water to run the crankcase, or if your needle and seat sticks, it can run fuel back there. So our first attempt to fire it up, she didn't want to go. We decided we'd have to touch up the points. And I apologize, but we lost all audio to some of these clips, so that's why I've just been narrating over it, but you will hear a run at the end here. So after a little bit of cranking and messing with the choke on this thing, she decided to run pretty nice. Now this choke, it's missing the spring that's supposed to push it open, so I don't have the choke exactly hooked up correctly. We then decided to put on the old flywheel cover again. I'm not exactly sure why I had this off back then, but she's back on now. Alright guys, so we finally got the 60 back together, going. Drove it around, it ain't too bad. Carb needs a little bit of adjustment here and there, but overall she was getting better the more we ran it. And yeah, she should be ready to roll. We'll still have to fix this radiator piece where it's broke up here. Tune up the carburetor a little here as summer wears on. Then we're probably going to put a new front axle on it here. You can see it's been welded there. Someone broke that at one time. It's not sitting exactly straight. So I'm going to try coming up with one of them, put that on, fix that radiator. And yeah, she should be ready to rock and roll here in no time.